Welcome everyone to another video, and in this video we are going to be taking a look at the Throwback Challenge. Celebrate our Pokemon journey together. This is the latest update. I'm going to be covering everything you need to know, mostly from a PvP perspective, but I'll talk about other perspectives as well. We'll be going over some stats, what you should be looking out for, what you should be focusing on for each event, whether you're interested in Silph Arena, Go Battle League, or future PvP content. So let's go ahead and take a look. This event is split up into 4 weeks. It basically runs from May 1st to May 29th, and we'll get down to, don't worry about the other stuff there. Basically, it's split into 4 events. They're mostly centered around these timed research related to different regions in the main series Pokemon game. Kanto, obviously Gen 1, Johto, Gen 2, Hoenn, Gen 3, and then Sinnoh, Gen 4. And then there's a 5th and final that will come after May. That will run from June 3rd to June 8th, and that will be related to the Galarian, the new region, and we'll get to that. But it's mostly focused on these 4 events, and then the 5th one will come later in the following month. So the Kanto event starts on May 1st at 1 p.m. and goes till Friday, May 8th at 1 p.m. local time. So it's a very short time period, 1 week, and you'll have access to the Throwback Challenge 2020 Kanto time research. And basically, you'll have to do a bunch of different stuff related to Kanto, and the research is going to be fairly simple. There's going to be some special Pikachus, don't worry about that. The really important part is that you'll get 10 rare candy for completing the research, and then as well you'll get a reward encounter of a Mewtwo that knows Psystrike. Unfortunately, the Mewtwo is going to be level 15, which is totally fine. Obviously, a higher level would be better if you're looking to max it out and you get a really good IV one. Unfortunately, it's actually too high level to be eligible for the Great League, so you only really care about the Mewtwo if for trading, and then as well if you get a really high IV one that you're going to be looking to max. It's only like 20 more candy to max level 21, level 15 one over level 20. So it's not like that game breaking if you do get like 100% Psystrike. And Mewtwo with Psycho Cut, Psystrike, and Focus Blast is one of the tier 1 Master League Pokemon. It's ridiculously good. Psystrike does so much damage with Mewtwo's Psycho Cut energy generation and the ability to have Focus Blast for coverage. It's very good. So I highly recommend, if you get a good one, then it's definitely worth investing in. And then there's other stuff, so Pokemon like Venonat and Chansey will appear more frequently. Obviously Chansey not that good in PvP, and then Venomoth has some niche play in some Silph Arena, but doesn't have that much play in Go Battle League. There's other Pokemon that'll be hatching from 7k eggs. Nothing too exciting, to be honest, unless Lapras has double legacy. I wouldn't worry too much of that, and the Lickitung, unless it has Body Slam, I wouldn't be worried too much about that. But you can use your Elite TM. For example, if you get 100% Lickitung, then Licky is actually pretty decent for the Ultra League, so TMing that to Body Slam might be useful if you have excess Elite TMs in the future, per se. These other Pokemon are only okay. Machop, if you don't have good Machamp for Masters, Ultra, or Great, then obviously that's one that you'll want to look into. And then Pikachu will have a Charizard hat. It's whatever, maybe it'll be shiny, I don't know. And then there's a shiny Venonat. So the shiny, I'm sure, looks quite nice, and it's a good flex if you do use a shiny Venomoth in your Silph Arena tournaments. 2 times Catch XP, 2 times Raid XP, 2 times Hatch XP, so a little bit of additional XP for those that are grinding, doing that grind. So that's pretty decent. It's nothing too crazy. Just make sure you complete the research so you can be eligible for the 5th week research, and also that Mewtwo is a pretty good Pokemon. So if you don't already have a good IV one, then it's certainly your ability to get one with some at least decent IVs. Johto will run from May 8th. 2020 at 1 p.m. to May 15th, 2020 at 1 p.m. local time, and you'll have access to the Johto time research. Something about Gyarados, don't worry about it. But there's a little bit of excitement. You get 10 rare candies, which is always nice. you have also be able to get an encounter of a level 15 Ho-Oh that has the event exclusive attack Earthquake. So the thing with Earthquake is that it still doesn't make Ho-Oh that good. Like if Ho-Oh had like a very cheap charge move, then it certainly would have some play. But unfortunately, in knowing Earthquake, doesn't really do it too much. It has the ability to beat Dialga if you run like extrasensory, Brave Bird, and Earthquake, and you bait with the Brave Bird, then you'll KO with the Earthquake, or you basically land the Earthquake. Then that's going to be enough to pretty much KO the Dialga. But besides that, it doesn't beat Giratina, loses Kyogre. It probably beats Togekiss because of its fire typing, but it loses to Malmetal. It probably loses to Metagross, which is actually pretty bad. Probably does. Maybe it doesn't. Actually, let's actually take a look before I stand corrected. But definitely loses to Malmetal. Let's go Metagross. Let's go the moveset that you'll want to use to be able to beat. Maybe it actually beats it. Let's see here. I guess it resists everything. Okay, so Ho-Oh actually beats Metagross, so I stand corrected. But it loses to Malmetal. Alright, there's no win conditions against Malmetal. It loses to Giratina Origin. Not really much play there. It loses to Altered. And probably loses to Mewtwo. Almost certainly loses to Mewtwo. Yeah, Mewtwo absolutely destroys it. So, and then obviously loses Kyogre. It probably beats Groudon, even with Groudon getting the event exclusive move Fire Punch, which actually wouldn't do very much because it would resist all of Groudon's moves. It just barely beats it in the 1 shield, so and doesn't beat it in the 2 shield. So, you know, it's you should get it. But I wouldn't invest anything in a Ho-Oh because it has very unreliable matchups in Master League, and it certainly wouldn't have very much play in Ultra. And then as well, if you trade with someone like with very low friendship, then there's a small chance that you can get it for the Great League, but it wouldn't be that good in the Great League either. It needs a cheaper charge move. Paired with Earthquake would be actually quite nice, but fortunately, not today. So not going to be that good, but you should still get it. The 10 rare candy is also really nice. In terms of Pokemon, you know, if you don't already have a good Skarmory, then obviously you should get one. Really good in Great League, only okay in Ultra. Maybe if level 50 ever comes out, it'd be really good in Ultra because there's very few flyers in Ultra, which allows, like, you know, the grass types and the fighters to basically roam pretty free. The only like real flyer is like Articuno, but it acts more like an ice type than a flyer. So if you don't have a good Skarmory, then it's good to get one. Chinchou is also really good because it evolves to Lantern, but none of these Pokemon are like new ones or really rare that you probably wouldn't already have. You know, a Pikachu wearing Umbreon hat. Unless Pikachu gets Umbreon's bulk, then it's not really that exciting. You get Shiny Dunsparce. I know some people are going to be very excited for that, but unfortunately it's not that good for PvP. You get 2 times Catch Stardust and 2 times Raid Stardust will be activated. So that's quite nice. Definitely a time period that you want to be able to grind dust, stack research, you know, put on the incense, play as effectively as you can, given your constraints. But that's a really good time to build up some Stardust, which will be quite nice, especially as we move into as we'll be in season 2, and you know, new Pokemon will be released, and obviously new monthly theme cups. So that's really nice. So I definitely this week I would focus on completing the research, get the red 10 rare candy, get the Ho-Oh, and then grind the double dust. Don't worry about the Pokemon that you're actually catching, because unless you don't have a Lantern or you don't have a Skarmory for Great League, nothing else is really worth going for. Maybe Pineco for Fortress would be pretty decent. Obviously, if you're into Silpharina, then you obviously want pretty much everything for Great League. The third week is going to be Hoenn. Hoenn will run from May 15th at 1 p.m. to May 22nd at 1 p.m. local time. And this is I would say this is the most exciting or the second most exciting, and you'll understand why I say it might be the second most exciting. So Groudon will actually get the event exclusive move Fire Punch. I know there's some people that are not buying into the hype of Fire Punch, but trust me, Fire Punch is really good on Groudon. One, it gives it a bait move, something it didn't have access to. Its cheapest move before was basically Earthquake, which is 65 energy. Even though it generates energy very quickly, it commonly got outpaced by many other Pokemon. So being able to get Fire Punch, and Fire Punch is really good because there's a lot of Steel types in the meta. You know, Malmetal, Dialga. Obviously, Dialga is Dragon Steel, so it would be neutral. Metagross, a bunch of other different Pokemon, and with the bait though, it makes it exceptionally good. So let's actually dive into some of the numbers and some of the matchups that you end up picking up. So I put it into a matrix where I have Groudon with Mudshot, Earthquake, and Fire Blast, and then Groudon with Mudshot, Earthquake, and Fire Punch. And then I have a bunch of different meta Pokemon. The ones I thought were meta: Dialga, Malmetal, Giratina, Altered, Origin, Togekiss, Mewtwo, Kyogre, Heatran, Rhyperior, Snorlax, Metagross, Swampert. You probably could add Conkeldurr, Machamp, all that stuff. Actually, let's go ahead and add it. Machamp, and let's add Conkeldurr. All right, and then let's press the battle, and the top line is going to be the ratings for Groudon with Fire Blast, and the bottom one is going to be the rating for Fire Punch. 500 means that it's basically an even matchup. Above 500 means that Groudon wins the matchup. The higher the number, the more favorable the win. And then the lower the number means what's below 500 it favors the opposing Pokemon. And this is all in the one shield matchup, assuming that they both land corresponding baits. And as you can see here, it's relatively the same. Obviously, Dialga matchup becomes a little bit easier because now you don't have to go double Earthquake. You can bait with Fire Punch, then land the Earthquake. But in this matchup, we'll talk about it a little bit later. And then same thing with Malmetal, Altered form, and Origin form. Now, if you land the bait with Fire Punch and land an Earthquake and then basically land one more Fire Punch, you basically win both those matchups. That is difficult to do, obviously, but it allows you a chance to win when otherwise you would just straight up lose against Giratina. So the thing is that Fire Punch makes Groudon a little bit better of a steel attacker, but makes it a better generalist because now it picks up two really big generalist matchups. It also wins the one shield versus Togekiss, but someone pointed out on Twitter that if Togekiss just straight charms and doesn't throw a charge move, then Togekiss would actually win. I think at best friends, but who's gonna have Togekiss as their best buddy? There's limited. We'll go into these matchups. It picks up a more reliable Mewtwo matchup. It still loses straight up to Kyogre, but Swag Tips, if you don't know Ryan Swag, he did point out that Groudon can now beat Kyogre down a shield. What do you mean? Up a shield, I mean? That means if Groudon has one shield and Kyogre has 0, Groudon can actually win that matchup, which is actually really important because there's some Pokemon that completely get hard countered, for example Kyogre and Rhyperior, and then as well Groudon and Kyogre before it got access to Fire Punch. It picks up a much more reliable Heatran matchup, as you can see, much more dominating. Picks a much more dominating Snorlax matchup, Metagross matchup, Swampert matchup, Machamp matchup, Conkeldurr matchup. Basically, every matchup is so much better. But let's take a look at some of these matchups. So we'll go into the Dialga matchup, and you can see you can bait here. You can also, pretty sure you can just straight Fire Punch, and then actually win this matchup. Obviously, you have to time the charge moves correctly so that all this stuff. But as you can see, just straight Fire Punch is a really great way to win that matchup. I'm not sure if you win this matchup straight Earthquake. You probably do. Yeah, you actually win this matchup regardless, but you can go straight Fire Punch and probably win the 2 shield as well. Yeah, so you can go straight Fire Punch and win the 2 shield as well. The only time that you should go straight Earthquake is in the 0 shield, but you can see here it's actually very close because it does get to an Iron Head right beforehand. But Groudon should win. Actually, no, Groudon does not win CMP. Oh, interesting. Slightly loses the CMP matchup, but as you can see here, it becomes a much more straightforward matchup against Dialga, which is actually quite nice. And then the Melmetal matchup as well. You can probably straight Fire Punch. You can just straight Fire Punch in all shield scenario. You can probably straight Earthquake, but you might it becomes slightly closer. So either way, a really good matchup for Groudon. And if we take a look at the Giratina alternate matchup, as you can see, you need to land the Fire Punch bait and then 2 Earthquakes, which is obviously difficult. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's better than not having that option at all. And then the Giratina Origin matchup, I think it's the same thing, except for you land a Fire Punch at the end. So you just have to land this Earthquake and then land the Fire Punch. And as well, they have to land the Shadow Ball. So if they don't bait, for example, they go straight Shadow Ball, then it becomes a little bit of an easier matchup for Groudon as well. So, well, it's not totally killer, but it is a useful matchup. So then here, as you can see, Groudon wins, but if Togekiss doesn't throw a charge move, then Togekiss actually is able to shield and then can farm down, and it prevents the Groudon from getting to the charge move. So, you know, your Togekiss player may or may not know that. And then Togekiss with energy is actually pretty decent because its charge moves allow it to cover its counters. But, you know, it still allows you to, if you have a slight energy advantage and a little, you've only lost a little bit of health, then you may be able to land that Fire Punch to actually win the matchup. And that's not something you could have done, for example, if you had Fire Blast, because it would just shield the it would just shield the charge move, then the Fire Blast wouldn't KO. So, yeah, this matchup's not as convincing, but it's only if they know that matchup, and as well, presuming that your Groudon doesn't already have energy. You know, it's still better than it was before. The Mewtwo matchup is a little bit more secure. This Kyogre matchup, so now Groudon can win with a 1 shield advantage, even if they try to straight Waterfall, even though they're going to get shielded, it's still not going to be enough. Groudon's going to have like a little bit less HP, but if it was Fire Blast, for example, Groudon cannot, because it's going to be just short of the Earthquake. So this is really quite nice. And then the Heat Train matchup, Snorlax, all those matchups become a lot easier. And you know what? This is like picking up a very few amount of matches, but Master League meta is so condensed that if you can pick up 2 more wins and then turn some like really hard losses to like okay losses, or possible wins with an advantage, then that is really game breaking. So I think that's pretty awesome. Like, Groudon hype is absolutely for real. Like, if you have 100% or really high IV Groudon and you don't get a good one from this research, then absolutely, in my opinion, it is, and you're really into Go Battle League, then it is the best way to use your Elite TM. It's actually like a really functional, like, meta used Pokemon that's like in the top 6 most meta used Pokemon, and it's going to completely shift the meta in Masters. Running the double steel lineup running double steel in Giratina is no longer extremely safe. So something to consider, and something to really shake up Masters, which I think is quite nice, and I think they've done a really good job there. So okay, yep, Groudon getting Fire Punch. Zangoose is actually pretty good in Ultra. Obviously, you've probably seen Caleb Peng post his videos with Zangoose. Really killer Pokemon. Really good because it's good against Registeel and Giratina. Both Giratinas, especially Origin, especially when it's not carrying Dragon Pulse. And then Skitty, Survivor, who really cares? Lotad, Slack Off. These are like, Sableye is good, Mawile is good. Is it worth patching a bunch of 7k eggs? In my opinion, no. But, you know, and then Pikachu with a Rayquaza hat, like shiny Skitty. So like, if you're really into cats, then obviously that's gonna be pretty cool. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. In the distance, needed to hatch an egg once placed in a square. will be halved, and the distance on Buddy Candy actually is halved, which actually might be quite nice. So that's actually pretty good, especially with the improved Adventure Sync. And then the fourth week, we're gonna have Sinnoh, which is obviously the fourth region, the fourth game release. It's gonna run from May 22nd to May 29th. Obviously the 1 p.m. time periods. Cresselia is actually like, I thought Cresselia, I thought it was like Grass Knot, it's okay. Grass Knot is, but the thing is, Grass Knot is a dynamic punch clone, a wild charge clone, 50 energy, 90 damage. Is actually really good, and as well, it's I believe 10 energy cheaper than Cresselia's cheapest charge move. Right now it has Aurora Beam 60 energy, Future Sight 65, and then Moon Blast 70. 50 energy is so good, and then plus Grass Knot in Great League is actually really amazing. I actually thought this was like overhyped. I'm like, oh, who cares about Cresselia? Whatever. But the thing is, this is actually definitely worth having. Like, this is like, I would say it's very close between Groudon and Cresselia, which actually is going to have a bigger meta shakeup. Obviously, like Cresselia is still going to struggle against Registeel. It's still going to lose to Umbreon. It's still going to lose to Shiftry, right? It's still going to lose to all those standard Pokemon. But now it picks up some more generalist matchups, and we'll be taking a look at that right now. So this is Cresselia. Typically, you want to run Confusion, Future Sight, and Aurora Beam. You want to run Aurora Beam for the Altaria matchup is probably the main one. You could run Moonblast, but it's not going to really flip you any matchups. Maybe the Shiftry if you're up a shield or an energy advantage and you land the Aurora Beam or land the Moonblast, but to be honest, it's not going to make a huge difference. The Aurora Beam is really important for the Cresselia, for the Altaria matchup. As you can see here, picks up 349 wins, 197 losses. But if you go to Confusion, Grass Knot, and Aurora Beam, again, giving up Future Sight for Grass Knot, which is actually pretty insane because Future Sight is a very energy efficient move. 65 energy, 120 damage is an Earthquake clone. But Grass Knot in Great League, it's so water centric that Grass Knot is gonna be able to allow you to do a lot of damage, and as well gives you a nice bait move. You can play around with these movesets depending on what you see, and you can see you go from 369 wins or something like that to 410, which is actually a pretty substantial improvement. And I actually have this spreadsheet here. You can't really see the beginning of the spreadsheet apparently. Okay, so we're gonna just shift the screen slightly. You'll see I've highlighted in green the matchups that Grass Knot picks up, and then the matchups you give up when you give up Future Sight. So obviously, in addition, Cresselia beats a lot of things because it's really bulky. You'll see it picks up the Defense Deoxys matchup, which I think is pretty important. The Defense Deoxys allows you to beat one of its fellow Psychic types. You pick up the Dugong matchup when it's running Ice Shard, Icy Wind, and Water Pulse by a little bit. And then as well, you pick up the Alolan Raichu matchup. Alolan Raichus are very common leads, very common anti-Azumarill Pokemon. So that's actually really nice to deal with. You do give up the Mantine matchup, and you do give up the Mawile matchup. They're pretty close, but the Mawile matchup becomes like pretty like, instead of like a dominant win, it becomes like a close loss, and then the Mantine matchup becomes from a close win to a slight loss. But I think it's totally worth it to pick up these three matchups. And in addition to the other matchups that you're going to have, the ability to bait, I think it's really nice. I think it's a really nice touch for Cresselia to have. So let's go ahead and go back to it. So I think that's definitely one that you want to be hyped up about and get your hands on. And if you can, try to trade for one. Because it's gonna be really useful in the Great League. I don't know its use in Ultra League. It might be still useful. Obviously, there's a lot of like Poliwraths and Swampers and all that stuff, right? But it's Grass Knot Moonblast is probably the way you want to go. The Future Sight is really nice for neutral damage, so it's hard to say. But definitely for Great League, it's actually really good. So let's go back to this announcement. So a couple things here. Don't worry about these Pokemon that are spawning in the wild. They're not really that great. Kratos, obviously really good for raids. Shieldon, obviously for Bastiodon. None of these are Gibble. Gibble is probably the most important one. Gibble, Garchomp is really good in Masters and a Pokemon you definitely pick up. I actually should have included in the list. And actually, let's actually include in the list. Actually, totally forgot about Garchomp. It's actually one of my favorite Pokemon. Most people in the higher levels are running Sandtomb. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll see that it still loses to Garchomp. So it doesn't make a huge difference. But maybe if it's carrying Earthquake, it would be a little bit different. But it doesn't make a huge difference. But regardless, I think it's definitely worth it. You want to save all your incubators for the Sinnoh week, because it does give you access to potentially hatch Gibble. Munchlax, yeah, but you probably should have a decent amount of them already. It's really good in Great League. Obviously, Snorlax is really good in Ultra and Masters. Riolu, obviously, Lucario is really good in Ultra and really good in Great League. Then Mantike for Mantine is also really good. So, but I think it's definitely worth hatching your incubators and saving your incubators for week number 4. And then 1 hour start piece duration, 1 hour incense. I think it's already 1 hour. Is it already 1 hour incense? Sorry. And then 1 hour lucky eggs will be active. So nothing too crazy for this week, but this week you definitely want to be hatching a lot of eggs because you want to get a really high IV Gibble. Garchomp is really fun to use in Masters, and I think one of the best Pokemon, one of the best closers in Masters, one of the best baiters, really bulky, fantastic Pokemon for Master League. And then the Throwback Champion Week. So once you complete all 4 research lines, you'll be access to the Champions Week, which will run from Wednesday, June 3rd to Monday, June 8th. So very short time period. Instead of a whole week, it's just going to be 5 days. And then you'll get access to Galarian Stunfisk. Will make its Pokemon Go debut. You'll find it in the wild, raids, and in the Throwback Challenge research reward encounter. So since you can do raids and in the wild, I'm assuming it's going to be pretty rare in the wild. Like Stunfisk was decently rare. And then in raids, obviously makes it a little bit more accessible if you can do a raid. And then Throwback research reward is actually pretty nice. 7k eggs, Galarian Meowth, Zigzagoon, Darmanitan, and Galarian Stunfisk. These first 2, don't worry about them. Zigzagoon might be pretty decent, but we got to see what the move pool is before we speculate too much. Linoone is like kind of a borderline Pokemon for Go Battle League, but it's actually can be pretty good in Silverina depending on the cup. But it hasn't ever been like overly meta, to be honest. And then Galarian Darmanitan and Galarian Stunfisk is what we're going to be focusing on. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So Stunfisk gives up its electric typing in favor of Steel. I don't know if that really does anything for it. Obviously, Steel resists a number of different types. Like it'll have a better Psychic matchup, which there's not like a ton of Psychic. I guess like against Cresselia, for example. It also like picks up, I don't know, like a bunch of different types. Like it's like neutral to grass, which is actually okay for it. It would probably still lose depending on the moveset it has to like Meganium and all the other grass types. But you know, it as well allows you to resist Steel. So, but Electric also resists Steel. So it's like pros and cons. Makes it weak to fire, makes it weak to ground. But Electric was already weak to ground, and then makes it weak to fighting. So it picks up a number of different resistances and neutral typings, but it's nothing too crazy in terms of its typing. In terms of its move pool, that's related to the Galarian form. You know, Mud Slap, not too great. Tackle, Water Gun, Metal Claw. The thing is that none of the Steel moves are that great, so like its upside is going to be kind of limited from a Steel perspective. And you don't see a lot of Charmers, right? So I really don't know how great it's going to be, to be honest. Maybe like a better Altaria matchup, because now it's going to be able to resist those Dragon Breaths as well. So it resists Fairy, which actually is pretty decent, but it doesn't really change too much. Electric didn't really do it a ton of favors, so I think it's a slight upgrade. But no stab on Discharge now probably makes your worse against Azumarill, considering if it does have the same moveset. I'm not really sure what moves it could be given that would really change it from the normal Stunfisk. I'm sure they can think of something, but I really don't see anything that's like, would be too shocking. Like, I don't know, Ice Fang, I guess. Like, give it Ice move to counter grass types. Like, I don't give it Earthquake. I don't know. There's nothing really here that makes it would make it too great. To be honest, like, I don't think it's really that fantastic. Galarian Darmanitan. So when we take a look at it, it's actually goes from a fire typing. It says fire here, but it's actually ice. I'm presuming that's what its stats are. I could be wrong, but it makes it really. It will, if it has decent moves. It actually has like some like decent moves available to it. So if we go to the Galarian form, it gets access to Powder Snow and Avalanche. Avalanche, obviously, one of the best charge moves in PvP and PvE. Powder Snow, obviously, going to allow it to generate energy really quickly. But being only ice typing doesn't make it a fantastic type. Ice only resists ice, and it's weak to fire, weak to fighting, weak to steel. So those are not really great typings for Masters. It gets access to Superpower, which actually might be pretty interesting to counter the steel types. So if it got like, Powder Snow Avalanche Superpower, I think that could be pretty decent. That would be pretty interesting. Obviously, it wouldn't have very much play against like Kyogre, for example, but it would be able to fight back against like Groudon, all the steel types. It would, have play against Giratina, so maybe that's actually pretty decent. But it's so glassy. It's really glassy. It's kind of like playing like Mamoswine. You just feel it's so glassy. It's taking so much damage. But I think it could be pretty decent. And with that attack stat, it would actually hit pretty hard. The Zen form is actually absolutely busted. 323 attack. Oh my god. That's actually absolutely insane. It's actually undefined in the ranks because it would surpass, like, Mewtwo is 300. 323 would make it absolutely insane. I don't even want to look up its move pool, but it's like Avalanche would probably kill a Kyogre as well, right? So but obviously we're not getting the Zen form. We're just getting the normal form, the standard form. So that's something you want to look out for. Potential, some Masters play. Probably going to be really good in raids as long as it gets some decent moves. It has access to some pretty good moves, so that's something to consider. So if we were to wrap it up quickly, just fire off what you should be doing each week. Kanto, just get your Psystrike Mewtwo. Don't worry about anything else. Like, if you want a shiny Venonat, then go for it. The rest of the Pokemon are not that exciting unless they get exclusive moves, like if Lickitung gets Body Slam or Lapras gets Double Legacy. Don't really worry about too much. If you care about XP, then this is a good week for you. Johto, you mostly want to focus on this double Stardust, double Raid Stardust. I think it's going to be really good. Build up your Stardust inventory is always really good. Get the Research Ho-Oh, but it's not really going to be too game-changing. You might throw off some of your opponents, but it's certainly going to be far from meta. For Hoenn, Groudon with Fire Punch is really hype. Like, trust me, you want to get it. It's going to be meta in Masters, and it's going to have some really great play. It's going to really shake up the meta a little bit. It's going to make Steel types feel a little bit less safe, which I think is very healthy for the meta. None of the things that you really want to hatch, don't worry about that. Buddy, Candy, Hat, different eggs, whatever. Sinnoh, week number 4. Cresselia, Grass Knot, really hype, really good for Great League. I think an upgrade over Cresselia, and at least gives Cresselia more threats than it had before, and can be able to deal with the water types, which for the most part he was able to deal with his bulk, but going to have even more dominant matchups. And then as well, you want to save up those incubators, hatch as many 7Ks as you can, because getting 100% shiny Gibble is the ultimate flex in Masters. Ultimate flex, best buddy, that thing. People are going to be screenshotting your matches. They don't even care what the outcome is. they're gonna absolutely love seeing it. So I think that's a really, really good flex and an absolute really stable Pokemon in Masters. And in the Champions Week, nothing too crazy here, to be honest. Darmanitan, Galarian Stunfisk, we'll see what moves it gets, but the rest of it is mad in terms of this particular week. Obviously, getting Genesect for eligible for Great League is good. No hiding behind a paywall anymore. But to be honest, it's not a good Pokemon at all for Great League. It has really limited play. I think Scizor really outpaces it unless it gets some crazy exclusive moves. It's not really going to be too crazy. Just get your rare candies. Collect your research rewards. Don't really fuss about this week too much until you hear about what moves Galarian Stunfisk and Galarian Darmanitan get, because they can certainly have some pretty decent play. So, anyways, hopefully you found that useful. I know it was super long, 35 minutes of me talking, but I really wanted to dive into this event, talk about the impacts to PvP. Hopefully you found this useful. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see everyone in the next video.